Today I'm going to talk about pain and being able to live and look forward and find an identity and purpose in your life after pain. And pain is something everyone in this room, sometime in their life, is going to go through, and it's going to try to shut you down. And when I was getting ready for this talk, it'd been so many years, but I'd forgotten. When I got out of the Marine Corps, and I'll tell more about this trip later, I took off on my motorcycle for 2 years, and I rode all around the country. And one of the places I went on my motorcycle was the Marion Wade Center. Because while I was on that trip, I was reading C.S. Lewis books. For those of you that don't know, C.S. Lewis wrote the Narnia Chronicles, the Screwtape Letters. He was an Oxford professor. He was a Christian apologist. He was just all around super cool dude. And so I went to the Wade Center just to look at some of the documents and things they have there. And I was thinking about this talk today and coming back to Wheaton. And one of the things I loved about C.S. Lewis was the way he would hit any problem head on, especially when it came to faith. He was not afraid of the tough questions. And everyone that knows about him knows about the Narnia Chronicles, and you know about the Screwtape Letters and all those things. But to me, the most interesting part of C.S. Lewis are 2 books that he wrote that don't get talked about a lot. And the first book is called The Problem with Pain, that he wrote when he was about 42 years old. And The Problem with Pain is a very C.S. Lewis book, in that he attacks the problem with pain, which is the reason ultimately most people don't believe in God or turn from God or lose faith in God is pain. Because you get enough pain in your own life, you see enough pain in other people, whether it's war or whether it's poverty or whether it's your child runs in front of a car, and you see that, and all of a sudden these ideas that God has a plan doesn't make any sense, and you lose your faith. And he dealt with that in a very C.S. Lewis way. So you read The Problem with Pain, and there's all these little C.S. Lewis arguments about, oh, it's just, that's God's plan, and this is how pain helps us, and blah, 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 blah. Well, he was 42 and he wrote that. And if you read it and you weren't undergoing pain at the time, you'd be, oh, that makes perfect sense. Well, 20 years later, he wrote another book called A Grief Observed. And that was talking about dealing with the most pain he'd ever felt in his life. Where later in life, he fell in love, he got married, and right when he thought he was at the height of things, she died from cancer. And C.S. Lewis had a crisis of faith. And when you think of C.S. Lewis, you think of him as the guy with all the answers. You think of him as great imagination. But this is what C.S. Lewis wrote in A Grief Observed about God. When you are happy, so happy you have no sense of needing him, so happy that you are tempted to feel his claims upon you as an interruption, if you remember yourself and turn to him with gratitude and praise, you will be, or so it feels, welcomed with open arms. But go to him when your need is desperate, when all other help is vain, and what do you find? A door slammed in your face, and a sound of bolting and double bolting on the inside. After that, silence. Now, how many of us have been in that pain, crying out for help, and all we hear is silence? And that's what C.S. Lewis was dealing with then. And then later on, he writes, talk to me. Doesn't sound like C.S. Lewis, does it? Talk to me about the truth of religion, and I'll listen gladly. Now remember, he's writing this after he's written all those great tracts on Christian apologetics, the Narnia Chronicles, all those things. He's writing this. Talk to me about the truth of religion, and I'll listen gladly. Talk to me about the duty of religion, and I'll listen submissively. But don't come to me talking about the consolations of religion, or I shall suspect that you don't understand.